Yeah, man. 18, what a whirlwind, because I had already been exposed to some insanely dark things. I had smoked crystal meth when I was 16, so felt pretty grown up by the time I was 18. We had a whirlwind, almost Hollywood style movie happen to us. It was a demo in the hands of John Feldman, followed by a free trip to LA, and that was just that teeny tiny part of the story already was more than I could have ever imagined ever for anything. And so we get out to LA, we meet John Reese, we meet some really, really important people in the music industry already. It was serendipitous is a good word because it felt like all these things were kind of colliding at once. And yeah, it was overwhelmed. We recorded 3 songs with John Feldman, which were immediately kind of not only started to change music already, but had started to kind of change the way industries were looking at new young artists. Coming from a small town in Utah where music was almost illegal. I think we played 3 shows before John Feldman got our demo, and he flew us out to LA. I think like 3 or 4 days after he heard it. He was in Sweden on tour with Goldfinger and called us from Sweden, freaking out about the songs on our little BR8 recording. We kind of had already had the whole local music scene in Utah freaking out. We played the demos at a bowling alley, and people were like, "What is this? This sounds like nothing we've ever heard before." So I think John Feldman heard the same thing and then took those songs to a completely other level. John Feldman was brand new at Pro Tools then, and John Feldman was really good friends with John Reese, and John Reese drove up to Feldman's house in Marina Del Rey, and it was beyond exciting. The excitement just between John Feldman and John Reese alone made me feel very uncomfortable, because it was immediately like, you guys are going to be huge. Everybody's going to want to sign this. Everybody that hears this is going to want to sign this. And I think that even with their high expectations of what they thought was going to happen, I don't know if they really thought that we'd have 9 major labels fighting over the band at the time. Flying back and forth from Los Angeles to New York, back to Los Angeles, back to New York, in every prestigious bar and strip club that they could, it was like a bunch of labels fighting over a band, like it was a Hollywood movie where they're whining and dining us, and we met, meeting millionaires at log cabins for fancy dinners. We're 4 kids from the streets, pretty much. So coming, I guess to back up a little bit, when I met the band, at the time, I was in a crazy dark place. I had already left my parents' house a couple years before that, very young, problems with them and the church, and I was just a live wire from day one. And got into drugs really, really early on. In Utah, everything is all or nothing with the youth of Utah, I think. So yeah, I'd been smoking crystal meth for about a year before I actually even hooked up with the guys. And so in the beginning it was really strange. It was already strange before this massive explosion of excitement around the band. It was just strange to hang out in a room with people who didn't talk about drugs. Like, I don't know how I'm gonna maintain this kind of. I thought it felt very fake. It felt like a facade to me, that I was trying to fit in where I didn't belong. I felt the same way when I got to Los Angeles and people driving BMWs, and I'm a hardcore kid. I never liked any popular bands. Fast forward to been on the road for about 3 years. We're making our second record with John Feldman in the studio, and my very first girlfriend that I've ever had, my first everything, the girl that I first smoked drugs with, I mean drugs, not just cigarettes and marijuana, but crack and meth, and she overdosed and died while I was making the record, and I'd never lost anyone in my life, besides a grandparent, which I didn't really care about, but this was my very first experience with death, and I think everyone around me at that time was just completely floored, didn't even know how to approach me about it. And obviously my way out of the feelings was with alcohol. And it was 2004. Just dove straight head first in. It was the one thing that I found that immediately would kill the pain, immediately would take me out of my own head. And that's the tricky part about alcohol, I think, is that it works so well and so instantaneous. So start the long dark road to a 15-year 2004 nearly 10-year drinking binge, I guess, where anything was possible as long as I had booze. And being in a rock band, especially a successful rock band, it's almost handed to you freely. It's almost, bands get endorsements from alcohol companies. So it wasn't a big deal that I drank in the morning. It wasn't a big deal that I slept until 4. I still do that. It wasn't a big deal that I needed to have a few shots before I go on stage. And it wasn't a big deal until it was. And the problems didn't really... It's a slow road down the dark tunnel. And those of you who have been there know exactly what I'm talking about. And you don't even realize that you've gotten way, way, way out of control until you could look back and literally be like, oh no, what have I done? And I guess the touring and the constant pressure from all sides could only exacerbate the problem, But in rehab, something really crazy happened to me, and it was like the universe spoke at me from every side. And I think a lot of addicts have had that same experience when you're at the bottom and something is screaming right in your face, like, hey man, your life, your precious life. So as I was in rehab, I decided that I was actually going to give it a shot and surrender. And what I found is that smoking weed kept me sane. I mean, my heart was broken losing. Alcohol was my best friend. And that might sound silly and sad, and it should sound silly and sad, but a true alcoholic and a true addict knows that feeling. It's like I would have rather died than quit drinking. And once I finally surrendered, we were talking about higher power earlier, and I thought I might have a problem with that in the program. I thought I might have a serious issue because my entire childhood was this battle with God, the Mormon God. But I found it so easy to surrender to a higher power. My drinking was more powerful than me. My drinking was my higher power. It's like the alcohol is more powerful than me. And that was just the first base. There's so many things that are more powerful than me. The sun, the moon, the waves, the earth, nature, love. But yeah, not to sum it all up and wrap it all up in a nice bow, but I don't think that I would have got through it if I didn't have marijuana. And I know it's really taboo for the program. A lot of people who are serious into NA and AA, that's not the way. That's not the way it works. But I am not everybody else. And for me, marijuana kept my head on straight. Marijuana makes me a better dad. It makes me a better recovering alcoholic. And it only took 5 or 6 years after that to kind of find my feet again. And I'm telling you, when I get high before I go and work out, I am focused and crystal clear. It is one of the most insane things. Maybe it makes the weight a little heavier, but a little heavy weight never hurt anyone. Not only that, but I think that there's a lot of conversation right now about mental health and about how serious mental health issues are, which is a great thing. The scale is so completely, the spectrum of mental health is so gigantic that I think it's really scary and tricky to talk about weed as the end all cure all. But in a rational world, I believe that people who suffer with the kind of depression that I suffer with, which is a constant urging dark voice that if I listen to it, it will convince me that I'm not good enough and I'm not attractive enough and that I'm not a good enough singer, and for some reason or another, and this might not be the case for everyone, but when I smoke a little bit of weed or when I have a little edible, that voice goes away, especially with the combination of healthy diet, exercise, and a clean head. Well, they say in the program, if your side of the street is clean, everything else in life is manageable. And I think that what my side of the street being clean means for me is I don't have anything to lie about. I don't have anyone to fool, especially myself, because art for me and poetry and singing has always been about a competition with myself. That's the only thing that matters. And I know when I'm fooling myself. I know when I'm trying my hardest, and I know when I'm not. So yeah, in the simplest and most complex way, weed has literally saved my life, just like music. It's amazing. Yeah, I should have mentioned when I fell off stage in 2011 and finally took a friend's advice and went to the doctor to get my arm fixed up. I weighed in at 207 pounds of tits and gut. What a mess. I was like a literal Dr. Seuss character with skinny arms and legs, and from here to here, just soft. And I don't care who you are or what you think, it's just not comfortable to be that fluffy. It's just, I'm 5'7", so 210 pounds on me is insane, like Santa Claus insane. So yeah, it catches up with you so quick. When you're drinking a bottle of vodka a day, it's really easy to eat a double cheese pizza at night all by yourself, or mac and cheese or fried chicken. And I'm a great cook. I don't mess around in the kitchen. So yeah, I think that it was all right around the same time. The last time my wife called the police on me, I have a tendency to injure myself when I'm blacked out, and I don't even remember it, but I will punch myself out. I'll punch myself in the face till I'm bloody all over, or I'll smash my head against a wall till I'm unconscious. And I was doing just that when she called the police. And I woke up in the holding cell and literally didn't know if I'd killed someone or if I'd hurt her, you know? Dark times. The craziest thing I ever did as an alcoholic, to keep it light, because I'm sure there's some just insanely dark stuff that's like, yeah, I woke up in my vomit and had shit in my pants and whatever, you know, like there's a lot of those. But we used to finish the bottle and do lines of Xanax on the back lounge, and then open up the back window and sit out the window and take your comforter and put it in your mouth, and then have your friends hold your legs and then drop out the back window and hang with your comforter. until the bus driver sees and pulls over and tries to beat you up for it because you die doing that. There was plenty of those nights. We used to have a name for it too. I don't want to. I shouldn't have even told that story. Don't try that at home, kids. On a tour bus. The craziest thing I've done as a functioning, weightlifting, marijuana using dad is not only watch two beautiful daughters come into the world, and I was there, clear and present, but also every time they wanted to play, I stood up and played with them. Every time they wanted me out of bed, it was easy for me to get out of bed. And selfish personal things like 9 months ago, I was barely deadlifting 135. Now I'm deadlifting 2 plates at 225. Those are my working sets. So all that stuff feels good as well. But the dad part of it, and the wife and I made a conscious decision, because I always wanted kids, but not as that kind of messy person. So part of me getting sober and part of me finding clarity was for the kids. And the fact that it was planned out and it took a lot of not only self-work, but sacrifice, all these things, so I could be the guy that I am now, who's always there for his 2 daughters, always. The best thing I ever did on weed was completely devour the entire Shakespeare catalog of plays, and surprising myself that A, I'd never gotten deep into Shakespeare, and B, that I could do that I could actually dig in, understand it, fall in love with it. So incredible. The amount of focus that marijuana gives me is pure bliss. I love to read, and just like every human, I'm scatterbrained. I'm all over the place. I have a wicked, terrible attention span, just like everybody else. But on the right amount of weed, I can literally read for hours. It's a beautiful thing. We have a record called Imaginary Enemy, and in that record, I wrote 3 political treatises about the war on ... So there's a written treatise on the war on drugs, and the reason why they've made drugs illegal is to squash minority groups. We all know that, and you can look way deep into that. But I have another theory about marijuana that seems very logical to me. Why religion and religious institutions kind of try to keep people away from mind-altering substances is because if you want to really take a look at what's inside of your brains and just get a little bit high, the thought process gets completely switched around. And I think that marijuana especially, but other psychoactive substances and like mushrooms and DMT, ayahuasca, acid, there's this huge difference between drugs that affect your body and drugs that affect your mind. And I'm almost convinced that religious institutions want to keep people from smoking weed because it really makes you think in a different way about everything. Thoughts in my brain my whole life about God, but the first time I smoked marijuana was the first time I was able to actually look at it a different way. And take that for what it means to you, of course. But I think that if you like a ticket to an open mind, to a different way to think about things, marijuana will take you there. We've come across a lot of people in the last couple of years who are getting into the weed industry, getting into marijuana, and for various reasons. You know, a lot of people understand it to be this big ticket capitalism. And what's 100% different about Five Star Extracts, just like you mentioned, is it started with love. It started about what is special and important about life, right? We have a lot of access to things that can destroy you. And we have a lot of access to the truth about marijuana as well, and what it can actually do for anxiety and for pain. Not even to mention the things that it can actually cure and prevent for epilepsy, for other things. So, and the research is just at the beginning. What I found different about Five Star Extracts was it was about the love first. It was about the heart of why people would want to indulge in marijuana. And you know, the story about someone at the end of their life having to rely on opiates, which we all know work, but we all know the second part of that story. Miserable addiction. And that's just not the case with marijuana. And the fact that's kind of the focus of Five Star is so appealing, I think. Yeah, the stigma around marijuana, I think, has been a stigma for so many different reasons. I mentioned the ticket to an open mind, and that's really bad for religion, I think. But I think that the government's, this is a tricky one. Big tobacco has had a raw grip on the United States. I think anything that's going to take money from big tobacco, it's evident that they've tried to squash it. Marijuana is such a beautiful alternative to cigarettes that it's almost criminal that it has such a stigma. But I think that the proof is in the pudding with weed, and the things that we already know about marijuana for a fact are so beautiful in comparison to the things we know about A, cigarettes, B, alcohol, C, opiates. If you have the option and if it works for you, you're in such a good place. You're so excited, and I think that if people took a chance, they might find that it would be able to, just like the grandfather story. We, you know, on morphine, on opiates, he was probably bedridden, right? I mean, how can you get up and walk around on weed? They said when he started taking edibles and smoking the weed that he's snapping his fingers, flirting with the nurse, obviously eating food. So yeah, I think the proof is in the pudding. The more research done, and the more the more we see that it has helped people, especially people who need serious help. The end of people's lives, that last bit, the people who have serious cancer, the people who have serious this psychotropic world of drugs, this psychoactive drugs, they're finding miracles. They're finding miracles about these substances, so it's a beautiful thing. What's been really cool about working with Five Star is their approach at the individual aspects of life, and how different people consume marijuana, and what kind of marijuana consumers are out there. For me, like a double shot would be something I would slam back right before I go to the gym, and that's hours of this peaceful focus and this incredible high that not only gets me through my workout, but the combination of that and the focused energy and the adrenaline from working out, it's the best night. I think that also they have the syrup for someone who's also like me, who can handle a bit of marijuana and would maybe like to go out to the bar that night. You slip a little bit in my mixed drink, hang out with my buddies who are drinking, and get seriously high from this syrup. So it's cool how they're kind of addressing each individual type of marijuana user. Yeah, the casual marijuana user, which I often find that I am when I'm at home. I hardly ever smoke other than at night. And if I am getting high in the day, it's usually to write a poem or something. So I think that these things that are coming out later on down the road, the gummies or something for someone like me for the moment, have a little gummy because I just dropped my daughters off at school and I plan on writing an incredible poem. That gummy's perfect for me. Or the bigger drinks, which, me and the wife are out at dinner. She loves to get high too. We're sipping on the bigger drink and that's our night made. But then I also do love to smoke. And I've found that the new world of these devices, I mean, taking a dab is a big deal. We all know that. Your first dab will take you to the moon. But there's something to be said for the end of the day high that can put me peacefully to sleep. It's really a loving. I get tucked in by the shatter at night. Just a warm hug and also a little kiss. Weight loss is insanely hard because of just where you're at in your life. If we live in America, you know how easy it is to eat delicious and yet super bad for you food. That what they found about sativa is that it can help burn fat faster. And not only sativa though, since I have been working out, and I work out 6 days a week, and if I'm not taking supplements to help the muscle recovery, and the one supplement I've found is CBD is a insane anti-inflammatory, and it keeps my ass in the gym, for sure. I maybe be too beat up without it. I've tested it back and forth, and the amount of actual muscle recovery, and even for my voice too. If I'm on a good dose of CBD daily on the road, my vocal cords never go out of me. It's pretty incredible.
Can we all, like best friends, celebrate?